And that's what's difficult, right? You're making money, but you're constantly churning it right back in the company, buying lots, buying land, investing in systems, and it's an expensive business to be in. But what he said he likes the companies that you can go buy and that do not require a whole lot of capital investment, but they flip off cash flow. Then he takes that cash flow and then he goes and puts it in other companies. And those companies do the same thing. Then they flip off cash flow. And so it's the whole thing, like you want to be making money while you're asleep.
Welcome to the Cannonball Mindset. And today I'm in College Station, Texas, which is, by the way, is like got to be the coolest city in the world because it's a city literally named College Station, and all that's here is really the college. I'm saying, is there anything else here?
It is the home of the 12th man, Chad. So you have Texas A&M University. It is the 500-pound gorilla. It's what makes this economy go. It's what makes this town go. And we bleed maroon. We bleed maroon.
So I'm sitting with Doug French, the owner of Stylecraft Builders. I'm sorry, that is one of the top 65 largest home builders in the United States. Is that crazy when you think about that? There's 2,700 home builders in the United States.
Yeah.
And you're in the 60s.
And what's really neat too, and this is going to toot my own horn a little bit, when you look at it, the top 20, how many of those are public?
Oh,
Probably 18 of them.
Oh, at least.
I think Weekly, and then maybe Ashton Woods. There may be another one in there that's not public. But you net out the public builders.
Oh yeah.
Which that's no fair. You can't compare a
no,
family-owned private builder to those guys.
Yeah, I agree. So if you take out the public.
You really look good, right?
The 30s.
Yeah, oh yeah. I mean, we're basically number one there. I mean, come on.
This is awesome. And so Doug French, owner of Stylecraft Builders, College Station, Texas. And what's remarkable is you're young. You're in your 30s. We're just talking about it. You're a couple years away, several years away from being the big 4-0. But when you think about that, when you hear one of the largest builders in the United States under the age of 40, pretty remarkable. Well over 100 employees. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, no, it's been a whole lot of fun, Chad. I've been a benefactor. You know, my father started the company 30 years ago, and so I was a benefactor of his success and being able to kind of come in and build his platform. And so he did a lot of really cool, good things here with Stylecraft, and I've just been able to build upon that. We had a great team. And we've built upon that team as well, and so it's been good. And then let's not kid ourselves. We're in Texas. I mean, we're in one of the strongest housing markets. You know, the last 10 years has been just been awesome, and so it's been a whole lot of fun. And yeah, we've been I've been a benefactor of my father, kind of setting it up, and then also being in Texas. So yeah. I don't want to discount those two deals either.
Yeah, I get that. But let me ask you a question. So and there's a lot I want to get to because you're an Aggie. We'll talk about, you went to college here, but how do you grow? I've always wondered, like, how do you take over in a family business? Because you basically run the company now. Your dad is still involved, but you basically run the day to day. Is that correct?
Certainly, yeah. My dad, yeah.
And so how do you have reverence for the fact of what your dad built, but maybe want to take it to another level? I see this a lot with family-owned companies where you're like, all right, listen, he gave me a great starting platform. He grew it. He mentored me, but I'm now like, this thing is a runaway train right now. You're blowing this thing up. Do you find conflict sometimes there? You're like, I have to do things differently. I want to maybe do this differently. How does that work? It is much different than, I guess, in a non-family oriented business. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, there's some, there's the business aspect and there's the emotional kind of side of it as well. Right. Then also you have family members that are involved. You have family friends that are involved that make some decisions really, really difficult. But, it's been a really, really fun journey. With my father, when I came in about 10 years ago, I just came in, I came in with a very, very humble attitude. And it was more, hey, how can I help? And anytime we ever hire a manager or somebody in leadership who's coming into an already established team, that's the advice I always give them. You don't want to come in hot. You do not want to come in hot because, number one, you probably don't know everything. You don't know everything. And if you go in there and act like you do, then people lose confidence in you real, real quick, Chad. They're going to see through that facade. And they're going to see that, hey, this guy's just trying to get in here, and it's about him, it's about his ego, it's about his pride. And that's really not who I wanted to be. And so I really tried to come in with an attitude of, hey, how can I come in and help? How can I come in and help? How can I serve? And so the first 3 or 4 years when my dad was still really, really involved, that was kind of my attitude. I just kind of got in, and where I saw a hole, I plugged it. And I got in and tried to add as much value as I could. And then, slowly but surely, I kind of, we as we grew, we kind of got some other team members out that were super, super good people. But you know how it is when you grow as a company, there's some people that just aren't going to be able to evolve with you, which is really painful. And it was. So we had some really tough decisions that we had to make, and some conversations that we had to have. And some people grew with us, and some people just didn't. And it doesn't mean that they were bad employees or bad people at all. It's quite the opposite. They were great employees and great people. It's just, what you need when you're building 100 homes or 200 homes is completely different than what you need when you're building 700. And also, my father is a very, very different personality than me. And so the leadership and the management and the people that really meshed well with him may not mesh well really with me, if that makes sense, and what I needed. And so so we've really, there's a couple of people that are still in our leadership team they're just awesome and do a great job and have evolved with the company and have continued to kind of grow with us. But the majority of our leadership team in place now is different than what we had. And a lot of those roles are just new roles. We didn't need a VP of sales and marketing. We were selling 200 homes a year. My dad was that. We didn't need a land development guy. My dad was that. And so as we've grown, as we've evolved, a lot of these new positions have opened up, and fortunately, I've been able to kind of get in there and kind of groom some people or pick who I wanted and get them in good positions. But honestly, if you looked at our company 4 years ago, 5, 6 years ago, there's really nothing today that's the same. I mean, we've changed every aspect of, because you have to, right? I mean, you go from 200 houses a year to 700, and you go to these different markets and that sort of thing. You got to change everything, and that's really what we've done. We've kind of got in there and changed everything. Yeah,
and you're a fixer. Maybe a fixer is not. I don't know if that's the right word. If I say that,
optimizer.
If I say you're a fixer in New Jersey, it takes on a whole different meaning, right? So one of the things that, to your point, is you have to continuously evolve. You have to continuously change. And to your point of saying, hey, listen, the company is completely different than it was 5 years ago. Do you think that's why companies get stuck, because they stay in the same mindset of maybe not good enough is good enough, but this is how it's always been done. This is how we've always done it. We just got to continue on that way.
Yeah, I think that's you definitely see that with companies, to where it's just you get used to doing something, you've had success doing it, and good enough is good enough, like you said. And sometimes that's true, right? You don't always need to tweak everything. Always, you don't want to have changes for change's sake. But at the same time, you need to be evolving. I mean, the economy, technology, everything's always evolving. And for me, I think I have a certain amount of healthy fear, where you start hearing about all this, 3D printed houses and offsite built houses are going to be imported in, and a lot of those companies looking at that kind of stuff. That stuff puts a little bit of fear in me. So for me, it's just always having a little bit of an edge there, thinking, okay, somebody's coming behind me, and they're trying to knock my head off, and that's true. I got a target on my back. Somebody's trying to come in and take our market share and take what's ours, or not what's ours, but try to get in and really beat us. And so it keeps you on your toes. And if you're not on your toes, you're going to get beat. And I think there are some larger companies, we've seen it over the last decade or probably longer, probably since the beginning of business, where people become complacent. Yep. They've done the same thing. They've had success there, and they just don't evolve. And it's kind of sad to watch. And you think about Blockbuster, and you really think about some of the stuff where technology just has come in and just completely wiped out these companies, and they haven't evolved. They haven't stayed on the cutting edge. They haven't really, Toys R Us is another really good example. They outsourced their internet strategy or their web strategy to Amazon. I mean, that's
crazy.
Not a good call, obviously, and they didn't evolve. You hear some of the things that people are now going back and critiquing. I'm like, why didn't you put You see these trampoline parks. Me and my kiddos went to one last night. Like, why didn't you put one of those? And Toys R Us is making that destination. There's just things those guys could have done to evolve that probably would have been real smart. And of course, hindsight's always 2020. It's really easy to sit here from a glass tower and poke holes in people. But yeah, no doubt. I think people get complacent. They get comfortable. And it's difficult. I mean, changing a culture to me is the most difficult thing to do in business. So if you come in, and it's not just about the technology changes, but if you have a culture that's resistant to change, and you've always been going left, and now all of a sudden you want to go right, that's difficult to implement. I mean, that's really difficult to implement. It's not just, opening up a new website or hiring a consultant. I mean, this is something that takes years and years, and you see people fail at it all the time, and it's difficult to change a culture. And I think a lot of that's really what's required, right? Like if you have a culture that is just kind of status quo, you feel comfortable, you've always been doing it this way, they're resistant to change, then you come in and try to implement change. I mean, good luck. That's tough. That's really, really tough.
Yeah. Peter Drucker once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
For breakfast, yeah.
And the whole idea of saying, I think you're dead on. The culture, because the culture, a company's culture is its people, really. It's the mindset of its people. That's what culture is in a nutshell, right? So your culture here is what is the mindset of the leadership all the way down to the newest employee that starts. And so changing a strategy is, hey, I can decide to hire this consultant, or I can decide to build this type of home, or I can go to a different market. But getting the people to adopt that. We were driving yesterday from Louisiana. We were with a client in Louisiana. We drove over here, and Evan had never been to Louisiana. I think you said you went to New Orleans once, and we were driving past this daiquiri place. The daiquiri places they have in Louisiana, where you can literally go have a drive-through and buy a daiquiri, right? And they put a sticker over top of where the straw goes. And you're thinking to yourself, does that daiquiri place honestly believe that the person that's buying that daiquiri is waiting until they get home?
Yeah, it's a horrible idea.
Right? But they must sell enough to stay in business, which means that I would say 90% of those people, I have no clue, but are drinking that daiquiri as they're driving home, right? Drinking and driving is illegal. So what that tells me is a perfect example of this, where they have a strategy that, hey, drinking and driving is illegal. You could hurt somebody, you could hurt yourself. But the culture hasn't really adopted it yet. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, so no doubt.
It's exactly what Peter Drucker meant. Like, you have a greater strategy, but if culture doesn't adopt it, and that's what you try to do. Companies are trying to change culture, and which is changing employees' mindsets. Is that right?
No doubt. Yeah, and I think that's what's difficult. And yeah, I love that daiquiri. We actually have a daiquiri barn here in town, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
And no, you're right. It's like drinking and driving is illegal, but you're going to let me drive through and get a drink to go. It's crazy.
Correct.
Yeah. And you see that, and honestly, some of the best leaders in our company, that's what I've seen them do. I've seen them go into their department and change culture. And when I see that, that's when I take notice. And those are the people that we promote and that we really, really take notice of.
How do you do that? So what would you say is, like, if you want to come in and you want to change the culture, the mindset of your employees? Listen, you're in your mid-30s.
Yeah.
You're, again, one of the largest builders in the United States. Unbelievably successful. Well over 100 employees. How does somebody your age with your experience come in and change cultures? I'm assuming of sometimes people that are older than you, that have been here longer than you, that believe they have more knowledge than you, may actually even have more knowledge than you. How do you do that?
No doubt. Yeah, no, and you're right. There were people when I came in. There were people when I was a young kid, and I worked on I drove around the warranty van, or I worked in the warehouse, which this actually where we're sitting right now used to be a warehouse.
Really?
Yeah. So, and they were my boss, and now here I am their boss, and so it's kind of flip flop some. But as far as changing culture, number one, slowly. It's not something I think, and that was for me. Some people may go in there kind of guns a-blazing and light a fire and be a little more aggressive than I am. That's not really my personality. So for me, it was something that I had to look at slowly, piece by piece. And then number two, it's got to start with me. It's got to start with me. If I'm not living it, if I'm not willing, if one of our values is constant improvement. We want to improve as a company constantly. We want to evolve as a company. So if I'm not constantly improving, if I'm not putting myself in situations, regardless of how scared I am or how much fear I may have about that or how much nervousness or anxiety or whatever, if I'm not putting myself in situations where I'm growing, I'm evolving, I'm changing, I'm becoming better, how can I ever expect any of my leadership team to do that or any of our employees to do that? So I have to, number one, lead by example. And then it's just one of those things too, like you have to identify the people that are not aligned, and you got to address it. You've got to address it. And typically, to me, that's the biggie. And for me, that was the most painful thing. There was people in our organization that just really weren't living our values, and those are the kind of people that you have to address. And not necessarily saying that they're bad people. It just they weren't a really great fit for us.
Yeah,
and
they're not a culture fit.
Exactly. And again, that's very, very painful.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm a if you know Myers-Briggs, I'm a feeler.
Yeah.
And so it definitely was painful, and we had some back and forth there. But eventually, you kind of get to the point where you have a really good team and everybody's rowing in the same direction. And I'm sure you've heard this, like it's the people. You have the people that have bad performance and bad culture. Yeah. Obviously, you need to get rid of it. I mean, like hopefully you don't leave them in your organization very long, right?
Right.
Then you have the people that have poor performance, good culture. Right. Well, that's also a problem. And typically for the performance stuff, we address. Then you have good culture, good performance. Those are the people you want to be promoting, and those are the kind of guys you want to build your team around, right? But then you have the people that have good performance, bad culture, and that's where people get stuck.
Correct.
That's
Toxic
where you get
achievers.
Stuck. Yep. You have these people that are really, really good performers, and they come in and they say the right things. They make you feel good, but then they undermine everything that you're doing. They undermine everything.
Yeah.
And, you're sending a mixed signal then. You're sending a mixed signal, and I know that it's difficult, and typically most organizations have people that have been there for a long, long time that are very good performers, but that have bad culture. And it undermines everything.
And that's such a that's the toxic achiever, the person who achieves great things, but at the detriment of everybody else. Yep. And as a business owner, it's got, obviously I don't have hundreds of employees, and so mine is very manageable, like 4 or 5 employees, very easy to manage, right? But on a business decision of, hundreds of employees where you have the lives of thousands and thousands of people, if you count your homeowners, you count your vendor trades, your trade partners, all these people at your fingertips, where hey, I'm making decisions for thousands of people. That's got to be a tough decision to make. I deal with these I deal with them. I deal with business owners who are like, man, this guy is so bad for the culture, but they sell a lot, they perform a lot, and I'm like, yeah, but they got to go. And you're like, yeah, but if I could lose all these sales, I could lose it. That's a tough decision.
So I look at the opposite, though. So typically, when I look at it that way, that's when I make the right decision. So what I say is, if I'm allowing this person to be in our culture and to undermine everything we're doing, it's impacting everybody. It's impacting our customers in a negative way. It's impacting the rest of our employees in a negative way. If they're in a management role, their employees aren't growing how they should be. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And typically, when I look at it that way, that's what allows me to make the right decision. And so I've got to realize that this is bigger than me.
Yeah.
It's bigger than just Stylecraft. And, when we make those kind of decisions, we have to be thinking more than just us, right? Yeah. And I have to be thinking about the customer and also the employees. I think I have a huge, huge obligation to our employees to have really good leadership in place.
Yeah.
And that's on me 100%. And if we're getting people that feel like they're lost and they're confused and people that are quitting or whatnot, and we're getting bad feedback on the leadership team, like shame on me. Like eventually that comes right back at me.
Yeah,
and so that's my job to go get that fixed.
Yeah. So I really appreciate that. And I think that's dead on. I think that it's a tough call for some people to make, but I think when you put it in the simplistic terms, like you just said, hey, listen, this has an effect on everybody.
Yeah.
It makes it a lot more easy to make that decision. Like, hey, listen, we may lose, 50 sales this year by this person, but bring the right person and we'll get them back. And you can have the right person in the right seat.
No doubt.
They may not be a dime a dozen, but certainly having the right person is key to any culture.
For sure. And anytime we've ever made that decision, you always have all the coworkers come and say, thank you so much,
what took you so long?
Yeah, exactly. And then you realize like it's not the end of the world. And even when people have, moved on, let's say that somebody, hey, my husband got a job, in Oklahoma, got to move, and it was a high performer, and you're freaking out like, oh my gosh, how are we ever going to replace them?
Yeah.
You always replace them.
Yeah.
It's just like me. If I got hit by a bus tomorrow, Stylecraft will go on. Stylecraft will go on, and that's not to undermine me or who I am or that I'm just some replaceable guy. I'm not saying that at all. But like this company,
business keeps going.
It's bigger than just me,
Yeah.
And if I'm so self-centered or so prideful to say that this company would cease to exist without Doug Frank, like that's not true.
Yeah.
There's other people that would step up, right? And
I love that. So you talked about it's starting with you about growing, about getting better, and then it trickles down in this culture of growth. And I think you said we're a learning organization, we're a growing organization. Sure. I know you put a lot of time into personal growth. I know you're a reader. I know you love listening to podcasts. How do you translate that down to all your employees? My experience is that there's a lot of people that don't pour into themselves, don't become the subject matter expert in their field. They don't make that time. How do you enforce it, but not shove it down their throat? How is that blend of saying, hey, listen, we want you to grow, to be in this culture, you have to grow. How do you translate that? How do you make that actually a reality for the person that's sitting at your front desk right now that may feel like, hey, I'm kind of stuck here. I haven't grown. How do you translate growth mindset?
Yeah, and I think that is difficult. And there's certain positions in our company that, we don't necessarily have to have somebody that's super, super ambitious or super growth man, but they need to have good culture, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I think it's just getting the right leadership team in place. And so number one, I've already said this has got to start with me.
Yeah.
And then I've got to make sure that I have people in my leadership team that are evolving as well and that are willing to get out there and be vulnerable and to deal with the tough situations and get out there and grow. And so I think that's really where it kind of starts for me. Yeah. I don't know that I've done the best job of getting it throughout the whole entire company, honestly. Yeah. But I feel like if we have in our leadership team, we get it down to kind of our middle managers, that they will continuously kind of push it down. And this is something we're going to continue to talk about. So it is one of our core values, improve. Yeah. And so it's something that we're just going to continue to talk about. And so one thing that we're going to start doing, Chad, and is when we hire, we're going to start talking about that. Like,
love
hey,
that.
We're going to have a little video or something. I'm going to be talking about, our culture of improvement and of service and of caring. Yeah. And just let you know, hey, if you don't fit with these values, nothing wrong with that, but like tell us now, because the last thing I want you to do is to come over here, uproot your family or quit your other job or whatever, uproot that and then come over here and be planted and then figure out, hey, you know what, I don't really like to improve at all. Like I like how I am right now. So we really want to start talking about that. And then also when we do any kind of performance review or raises or stuff like that, start to really kind of incorporating that more in our culture. So for us, I think that the first thing was me doing it. The next level was getting the management team, making sure that they have a growth mindset, and then kind of pushing that down towards them and making sure we have the right people there. And then now it's kind of getting it throughout our whole organization, which I think we still have a little ways to go, honestly. And so I think the things that we're going to implement this next year are going to be talking about it more, getting these values out there. I'm talking about these values, but honestly, I haven't officially even announced them to our company yet. This is something that's just brand new and hot off the press for us. Yeah. And so it's something we're still trying to kind of fill out. But give me a year or so, and I'll probably have a better answer for you.
I'll come back in a year. It's
Either
awesome.
that or I'll tell you what not to do, one or the other.
It's a pretty good answer already. One of the great things is when we work with clients, we always, a rule of thumb of ours is we don't work with any sales staff unless we're working simultaneously with the leadership team. Because the leadership team has to be on board with growth, like the sales team or whoever else. Doubt. So we have meetings where the entire executive board once a week, and we're talking about how to become a better coach, how to become a better leader, how to have a growth mindset. And you can see it. You can see, like, hey, when the leadership is involved and they're really taking this on, this idea of what you would say improvement on, it translates. Like it's like, all right, I see my boss, I see my coach, I see my leader going to growth meetings. I see them reading, I see them pouring into themselves. it now just makes it easier for me to do it as
Yeah,
well.
no
right?
doubt, no doubt. And then also one thing, and I listened to Tim Ferriss's
Love
podcast
Tim Ferriss, yeah.
quite a bit. And he's awesome.
Love
Yeah,
Tim
really got a
Ferriss,
lot of
yeah.
that. And one of the things when I've listened to their, like when they interviews a CEO or whatnot, they talk a lot about stories. They talk a lot about, one of the best ways to enforce culture is to make sure you celebrate it when you see it,
Yeah.
and use stories. And if you think about it, that's what people like to hear. They want to be entertained. I want to be entertained.
Yeah.
And so how do you entertain? Entertaining is by telling a story. And so if you can think of really good stories and make sure that you see those examples,
Yeah.
and just make sure that you really celebrate those and talk a lot about them. And so that's one thing that I've been trying to use video actually. So I do a lot of the Vimeo stuff. So I get people in to come shoot videos. We'll kind of, if we have somebody that just did an awesome job with customer service, we'll kind of get in there and tell a story about them and talk about service and that sort of thing. And I think that helps reinforce that culture as well.
Yeah, and one of the things is pride is one of the greatest intrinsic motivators there is. When somebody feels a sense of pride in what they do, they like that feeling. If I have a good interaction with the customer, I have a good interaction with an employee, that pride that I feel for doing something good sends all kinds of chemicals through my body. I want more of that feeling.
Yeah.
I want more of that. Yeah. And so when somebody sees us, we celebrate a story, or celebrate a success, celebrate a great behavior, celebrate something we saw, that employee feels pride, and they're like, oh, man, I like that feeling of feeling good about myself. I want more of it.
Yeah.
And other people that see it, they're like, oh, I want that feeling.
Yeah.
And so it's contagious. Storytelling and pride is a real contagious belief, which I love that. So let me shift a little bit. So we're talking about culture, we're talking about growth. The whole idea of how do you continue to evolve? You had mentioned about Toys R Us and Blockbuster and all these companies that kind of had gone under. And a lot of people will say, well, that's not really their fault. That's Amazon's fault. That's somebody else's fault because they came over and put this person out of business.
Yeah.
Do you buy into that?
No. I mean, competition makes you better.
Correct.
It makes you better. We have D.R. Horton moving into this market right now. And do I want them? No, I don't want them here, But at the same time, you know what? It's going to make us better. It's going to make us better. No doubt in my mind, we're going to be a better company.
No question.
And honestly, it's better for the consumer. The consumer's probably going to get a more competitive price because D.R. Horton's going to come in here and have really competitive pricing, which is going to make us be more competitive on the price point, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to make us better as a company. We have to have better service and better product and better everything. And so, people talk a lot about competition, and Amazon's coming in and killing everybody, and Walmart did it with, the mom and pop stores. And I get that. And I think there's some, it's sad to see that. And I don't want to discount that at all, or just undermine that, or make it act like it's not a big deal, like it is. But at the same time, like as a company, that should really drive you to make you better. You should think, okay, what am I now going to do that is going to be different? What am I going to do? And if you're going against Walmart, you probably should go read. What's that book? Raving Fans. Go read the book, Raving Fans, and make sure that every one of your customers is now a raving fan. Because at Walmart, they're not doing that, baby. They're not going to do what you can do at your little mom and pop store, your little hardware store or your hardware store. So do that, and then you have a competitive advantage. And so there's always things that you can evolve and do and become better. And that's what competition drives you to do, right? And that's the reason that our economy is so great. That's what makes America so great. Is it always fun? No. And I would love to be able to sit back and say, well, if such and such hadn't have done this or such and such hadn't have done that, we wouldn't have made that bad mistake. No, that mistake falls on me, you know? And so I think that's my opinion. I think competition is a good thing. Is it fun? No, it's not fun. Is it keep you up at night? Yes. But you know what? When you stay up at night, you're thinking about how am I going to get better? How am I going to evolve? Right. How am I going to compete? And when you're thinking those kind of thoughts, it's better for the consumer. It's better for the industry. It's better for everybody.
I agree. And I think to your point earlier, and you didn't use this term, but I'd say this healthy paranoia of saying, hey, listen, how am I going to get better? How am I there was a time when people, if you were in New York City, they would stand in the rain and they would wait on a corner and wave their arms up and down and jump up and down and whistle to wait for a yellow car to pick them up when they had to go 10 blocks, right? And it was perfectly status quo. Everybody played by that rule. This is how business was done. But somebody came along and said, I think there's a better way.
Yeah.
I think there's a better way. I'll start a company that you can call for your car on your phone. You can track it, and then you can walk outside and that car be sitting there for you, right? And then that's how Uber is created. So the idea of saying, people just the Amazons of the world or these big companies that come in. D.R. Horton's a great example of it. There are people that are looking to find ways to do what you do better, quicker, cheaper, right? Yeah. D.R. Horton probably is not that. They're not going to do it better. They may do it quicker. They're a different type of builder than you are. But it is going to make your salespeople fine-tune how they sell. It's going to make that. And when you learn how to compete and you learn how to win, now I just got better.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Now I just added to my resume.
No doubt.
So yeah, it'd be great to have zero competition. The challenge is when you have zero competition, you don't really it's really hard to get better.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a driving force that's pushing you to say. Somebody once said to Tiger Woods, this was a long time ago, somebody said to him, I think after he won his first or second Masters, somebody said, who's your biggest competition? Is it I think it was Ernie Els or David Duval or somebody at that time. Is it this person, that person? He said, no. He said, my biggest competition is the 10-year-old kid that's home right now watching what I do, is going to do exactly what I did and is going to get here a lot faster. Yeah. And so sure enough, 10, 15 years later, you have Rory McIlroy, you have Jordan Spieth, you have all these people. And what do they say? I grew up watching Tiger Woods. And so there's somebody right now that is looking to compete with you.
No doubt.
And is just going to copy what you did. Yeah. And because they copy, they don't have the learning curve. They're going to get here a lot faster. Yeah. Competition forces you to continuously fine tune, right? How are we doing it better? How can we be better? How can we be better than this person that exists? It's how can we be better than we were yesterday? Would that be fair to say?
No, exactly. And yeah, I think that's exactly how we look at it, and that's our mindset. I think I read the book Tribes, and I think that was what tribal leadership is what it was. Yeah. And it talked a lot about that. It said it's like the fourth level where you're not necessarily just so afraid of your competition. You're really worried about making yourself better. Correct. And it's not that you're trying to get out there and just knock the other guy's head off. You're trying to get better. Yeah. And I think I probably misquoted it, but I think it's like the fourth level or something. I'm not saying that we're there yet or anything. Yeah. But
how can I be better than I was yesterday, as opposed to how can I be better than this person? How can I be better than that person? How can I?
You're focused on yourself at that point.
Which is listen. I think that's and you're a big reader and a big growth guy, but I think that really is mastery. Mastery is this idea of I'm on this pursuit of mastery of how can I just get better? Like how can I be? There's a book called Atomic Habits written by a guy named James Clear, phenomenal book, and he said, if I just get 1% better every day, just 1% better over the course of the year, I'm
killing it.
Yeah, killing it, right? Yeah. And so the idea of today, listen, D.R. Horton may not be here today, or Amazon may not be here today, but they're coming. Yeah. And I have to have this mindset that, hey, they're coming and I have to continuously evolve. Otherwise, at some point, somebody's going to catch me. I'm going to get left behind.
Yeah, you're going to get your head knocked off. Yeah,
that's exactly right. I think sometimes that fear of them coming paralyzes us rather than motivates us.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Yeah, oh, for sure. And yeah, you certainly see that. And for us, we just try to channel that in a positive direction. And you don't want to get so scared that you're anxious, and that you're, like you said, that's an unhealthy fear. But yeah, you have that, what do you call it, a healthy paranoia. Like you got to have that. Like you got to have looking over your shoulder a little bit, because that's what's going to make you better, right? Yeah.
And in all facets.
No, for sure.
I have a healthy parent. What's crazy? I was talking to somebody, and the number one. It was my kids or something, and they were saying something, and I said, "Well, are you worried about? They were talking about their 15-year-old girls, and they were talking about getting into college. Yeah, right. They're 10 years old. They're trying to get in. They're coming up with their list of schools they want to go to.
At 10 years old?
At 10th grade.
Oh, okay. I was like,
10th grade. All right. And they're coming up with lists of schools. They haven't visited any school yet. So they have this list. And there's schools like North Carolina, Chapel Hill, Duke, Texas A&M, Tennessee, these big monster universities. Well, now they're starting to do the research of what it actually takes to get into school.
Yeah.
Like you need a 1,300 SATs. It's getting harder and harder to get into some of these schools. And so my daughter Madison is like petrified. Like she's like, I gotta get this. If she doesn't get a 100, if she doesn't get 100 on a test, I'm like, listen, you can only control what you can control. Like you gotta do the right behaviors. You gotta study. You gotta to get in. But then at some point you just gotta let go. I'm on this quest to get better. At some point, you can't have anxiety about the whole process. You can only do what you can do and be committed to your own growth. Is that? I'm saying, is that true with your employees? Is that true with everybody in all facets of life? Like, control what you can control. Focus on getting better, and then just let go and let God.
Yeah, and no, I think you're 100% right. And that school example is a perfect example. Chapel Hill in North Carolina, you may get swallowed alive in that. You may get nothing. You'll be one of 300 in the classroom, right?
Exactly.
And so it may be better to go to a smaller school and be the smartest person there, and then know all the professors. And so there's, but you're 100% right. You can't get in there. And I'm going to harp on this a little bit, but I think the amount of pressure that kids and college students as well, we see it all the time, place on themselves. So we go to a church here in College Station, of course. So there's a ton of college students there, and we have baptisms on Sundays. And it's really neat. People come up and they share their stories. And so they're sharing their story, and almost every one of those college students says they struggle with anxiety or depression. Yeah. And I'm like, that is so, and I did when I was young too. But I'm like, that is so sad that we live in a society. And I'm not saying obviously they have some personal responsibility there, and I think a lot of them have overcome that, but there's so much pressure now, especially for kids. It's crazy. A lot
it's
more
crazy
than ever
with us.
To be thinking like that. And the reality is, like, getting in North Carolina is awesome. Getting into Harvard, getting into Texas A&M, these are all great schools. But Sam Houston State is in Huntsville, 45 minutes away. You get that's where my father went. He got a great education there. He studied small business. They don't have a small business degree at Texas A&M, and so he really, and I think he learned about life insurance and personal financial statements. They didn't teach me that. They were teaching corporate finance at A&M, and so it was almost a better fit for him. People put so much pressure on themselves to do this stuff. And how does that translate to business? It's the same thing. If you get in there and you're so worried about competition coming in, or you're so worried about this, that, and the other, and you're not focused on what you can control and making the best of your situation, you're going to miss out. You're going to miss out because there's going to be something there. If it's not getting into Texas A&M and going to Sam Houston State, there's something there for you. And if you make the best of it, you're going to learn a lot, like my father did. And he turned that into a great career, right? And I think
sitting in it today.
Yeah, and I think you can use that example in a ton of stuff in life, right? Like, there's always setbacks, but it's how do you respond to those setbacks? How do you respond to those setbacks? Do you have a positive attitude? Do you get in there and make the best of that situation and turn nothing into something, which is something else we talk a lot about. I tell a story, talk about stories. My grandmother started French's schools back here in the 1970s, and started out of her living room. Actually, people would come in, drop their kids off, put a quarter in the shoebox, and then Darwood Melba French would watch them for the night. They started that in their living room. They built it up to 5 or 6 commercial daycares, and they sold out to KinderCare in the 1980s and did really, really well. My dad took some of that money and started Rainier Homes and Stylecraft, and here we are today.
Wow.
But one thing my grandmother would do, my mom tells me the story, they'd be driving down the road. This one, they didn't have any money. They'd be driving down the road. They'd see an old abandoned couch on the side of the road. Say, hey, Darwood, pull over. We're going to pick up this couch. They'd load the couch in the back of the truck. She'd go home. She'd recover it, and she'd sell it. And that's the kind of lady she was. She took nothing. She took nothing, trash on the side of the road, and turned it into something. She took a daycare center that started in her living room and turned it into something. My father took, when that seed money that my grandmother gave him, because he ended up running those daycares, and turned it into Stylecraft and Rainier Homes. And so now it's my turn. I have to take what's been entrusted to me and continue to grow that. And so, and again, obviously I didn't start with nothing, but it's all relative, right? It's all relative. And so,
it's a great story.
Yeah, no, but it's really, really neat. And my grandmother has a great legacy. And that's one thing we talk a lot about here. And that's one thing that kind of drives us, and I think that's in our culture. It's in my DNA for sure. It's just really, really neat to think about. That's where this whole thing started. It started from my grandmother saying, you know what? my husband's a butcher. We're not really getting by. I want a better life for us. So I'm gonna open up our living room, and I'm gonna let my friends' kids stay with us for a quarter or whatever it was,
Yeah.
and then you build this nice company and then sell it. I mean, it's the American dream. And
That-
she was a poor cotton farmer, a poor and from Italy, Texas. So if you ever heard of Italy, Texas, it's always a joke, right?
right.
I'm going to Italy, yeah, Italy, Texas. And so that's where she was from. A poor cotton farmer came to Bryan College Station and built a great business through hard work and turned nothing literally into something. And so it's really neat. It's really neat to think about that. It's a huge legacy and something that I feel proud to kind of carry on.
What a great story.
Yeah.
I'm saying it really is if you think about it. And you said it. You said it briefly, but it really is. That's the American dream of saying, hey, listen, I have a desire to want more, and maybe it's not even more stuff, but I just want better life. I want a better life for me and my kids and my family, and to have the wherewithal and the mindset of saying, I'm going to figure out how to do it. From grabbing an old sofa and resurfacing it and selling it to, opening up your house. But there's one of the, Gary Vaynerchuk, who I don't know if you know Gary, he's written a couple books. Yeah. He talks about how right now with technology and the internet is the great equalizer. Yeah. Like you can, what it means is that you can create a podcast for free. Yeah. You can
start a shop on Etsy, right?
Yeah, put a shop on Etsy. Yep. You can literally create. There's so much opportunity there.
The barrier to entry has been tore down.
Right, that's it. There's no. It used to be for only a certain amount of people, right? Yeah. For people that already had the money, already had the connections. Well, the internet has made everything equal at that point, right? And so there's only one thing I think that stop. I think there's a big roadblock for a lot of people to get into, to become successful, to have the life they want, whatever that means to you, success, whatever that means to those people. And that is your own belief about that you can achieve it, you're worthy to achieve it, whatever there's a story there. Would you agree with that?
No, for sure. You hear a lot about that, and I'm trying to remember what it was, but I know I've taken a test before, and one of the questions it asked, it's something to do with mental health, but it's like, do you believe that you control your destiny?
Yeah.
Do you believe that if you work hard, you'll be successful? And if you don't believe that, that's a depressing thought, right? And a lot of people that are I was a psychology major at A&M, and so it may have came from that. But a lot of people that don't feel like they have any control. That hey, if I have an input over here, it doesn't end up having a result over here. That's kind of a tough thought. That's kind of but in America, we believe, typically most people believe that hey, if I get out there and work hard, doesn't mean that the playing field is 100% level. I was given a lot, and I've been entrusted with a whole lot, so I had a hand up, no doubt. But at the same time, there are countless stories of people who've started from absolutely nothing. My grandmother being one of them.
Yeah.
And who have built just really, really nice businesses and that are living the American dream. Or maybe not even built a nice business. Maybe you start a nonprofit. Maybe you have an impact through your church or through your community, or you go work for the city and have a huge impact there. I mean, there's a bazillion ways you can do it, but it's just that thought of, there's going to be setbacks in life, and then what are you going to do? And if you get in there and you work hard and you hustle, my belief is that you're gonna reap what you sow, right? If you get in there and if you hustle, you have a good work ethic, good culture, good attitude, success is gonna come. My father always says, cream rises to the top, and I believe it. You see it, even if you start at the bottom, eventually, if you keep working hard, you keep showing up, you keep suiting up, you keep doing the right thing, eventually success is gonna come your way. And of course, I know there's some examples of people that maybe that didn't happen to, but in general, I feel like that is the rule.
Agreed. I was with a group of people yesterday. We talked about this a lot with the people I work with, and we were doing a strategic planning for 2020, and we have a big workbook. We take them through this whole exercise, and at the end, I said one of the things that's really important. We've now spent weeks going over what you want, setting a goal, and then creating the strategy behind it,
Yeah.
right? And you see this with businesses all the time, that they set their goals, their yearly goals. I'm sure your company for the new year set yearly goals. And you set it, but then in a business, you then set the strategy. Like, all right, now how are we going to get there? Like, let's get all the pieces. Well, people should do that with their own lives as well. Like, you should be strategic in trying to achieve what you want. And so one of the things we talk about, though, is, and I say it to my kids all the time, I said it to my daughters about college, and I said to them, these people yesterday, was you got to divorce yourself from the results and marry the behaviors. Yeah. I'm emotionally unattached to what the result is. I'm emotionally tied to the things I can control every day, which is behaviors. Yeah. Bill Walsh wrote a book, The Squirrel Will Take Care of Itself. And the whole idea is that if I do the right behaviors, I have the right strategies, I show up, suit up like you talked about, right things are going to happen more times. And if they don't, then you can go back and you can look at the behaviors and say, what do I need to fine tune? Where do I need to tweak the recipe, right? But so many people judge that if you're number one salesperson this year that works in a team, how many salespeople do you have? 30 salespeople, 20 salespeople? Yeah. So if your number one salesperson in 2020 sells 40 houses, I'll make a number up. Right? Let's say your top salesperson sells 40 houses. And their happiness is tied to the end result. And they work an average of 260 days a year. But their only happiness, their only happiness is tied to when they sell a house and when they don't. Then they're going to be pissed off 220 days out of the 260 days they work.
And they killed it. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And they killed it, right?
Yeah.
So they're going to be unhappy and miserable and frustrated that they didn't sell a house the other 220 days.
Yeah.
As opposed to if my happiness is tied to my behaviors, which means I get up, I make great follow-up calls, I make great presentations, I greet everybody with a smile. There's so many ways every day for you to find happiness. Yep. So I'm gonna find the right recipe, I'm gonna find the right behaviors, and then I can always control my behaviors. I can't always control my result, but I can always control the behaviors in which I do to try to achieve the result. Is that right?
For sure. Yeah, and I'm gonna completely butcher this, but when you're talking, it reminded me of that deal. It's like behaviors lead to habits, and habits lead to something else, and something else leads to your destiny. Or I'm sure you've heard that, right?
Yeah, exactly right.
And I mean, that's what it made me think about. And you're right; it's those little things. And I had a guy. He's a really successful businessman in Killeen, Texas, which is where Fort Hood's from. We do some business there. And what he told me one time was, he goes, "You know what, Doug? Every day I get up and I go to work really, really early, and it's kind of and I can't remember exactly how he said it, but basically what he said was." Somebody else, this is a small behavior, somebody else is getting up at 5 a.m. and they're getting in there and they're clocking in and they're working hard and they're going after it and they're coming after me, you know? Oh, yeah. And they're having the right behavior, right? And so it's maybe just a small thing, but those small things coming into work, and really what he was getting at is coming into work every day and working and working and working and then doing it the next day and the next day and the next day. Eventually, you get to where you want to go, you know? Yeah. You get to where you want to go, and it's the same thing. If you have those habits, if it's, I'm going to read an hour every single day. Yeah. And if you do that every single day for 365 days, you've read a lot of stuff. You've had a lot of personal growth. You've become better at your job. You're probably more happy. You're more, I mean, there's so many different
It trickles results. Into so many other areas of life.
Exactly. And that's a very, very small habit. Or like you said, if you exercise, right? Or if you eat correctly. I mean, there's so many different small habits that, if you eat good for one day, it's just one day, right? If you exercise for one day, you're probably miserable. But if you exercise 4 days a week for years and years and years, your longevity, your health, your livelihood, your happiness is, your chance of depression, all these things decrease or get better, right? And so it's those small things, but it's small things in bunches. Like you got to do it day after day after day after day, and it has a cumulative effect.
No question. Yeah, I think one of the things that people miss out on, there's the story of how bamboo grows. That you plant bamboo, and for 5 years you won't see anything. You'll see very little pop above the ground, but it's grown this massive root system underneath. Yeah. So for 5 years you see nothing. You're watering and you're taking care of it, and it's taking root. And then from the day it pops to the ground, it grows 60 feet in the next 9 weeks. Yeah. So, the idea is people give up on it a little bit too fast because they don't see immediate results. And we live in this world now where we want immediate gratification. And life, unfortunately, just doesn't work like that
doesn't.
for most people. Hey, listen, that overnight success that we think, oh, this person came out of nowhere. No, for years they were planning their root system. For years, and so we work with people. We see people all the time that they're like, well, Chad, I'm doing these realtor presentations. I'm making the follow-up calls, and nothing's. It's like you got to keep watering. You got to keep watering. Keep doing it. Do you believe you're doing the right behaviors? Yep. Are we coaching you on how you're doing it? Yep. Great. All right, let's keep doing it. And then all of a sudden, they have a little bit of success, and that success is like, oh, now I see it. And then all of a sudden, they build up what Darren Hardy calls the big mo, this great momentum. And all of a sudden, they're on a roll, and you're like, man, where did all this come from? Well, it was all these years of doing the right things, all these months of doing the right thing. It's now showing the fruit of your labor.
No doubt. I think that in recovery, I'm in recovery. I think I've talked a little about that. I'm in recovery from drug and alcohol addiction when I'm 17 years sober. But they say, don't give up before the miracle happens. Don't give up before the miracle happens. And you're right. And in that program, it's going to meetings and getting a sponsor and reading and praying. And there's 5 things you're supposed to do every single solitary day. But if you only do them for a week, it doesn't make a difference. You got to do it for years and years and years. And then one day you look up and think, good gosh, I'm actually pretty healthy now, And I'm in pretty good shape. But you've got to do it over and over. And I think that's true in so many different aspects. True with your health, spirituality, recovery for me, your professional life, your marriage or your significant other, your kiddos. I mean, these aren't things that just happen over. It takes a tremendous amount of work, and you got to be dedicated to it, and you got to have that habit and do it over and over and over.
It takes a lot of intentionality too, right?
It does.
Really, my word of the year in this goals program, we created a word of the year, and for 2019, my word of the year is intent, and it's plastered all over my office. I have signs made. I have it's everywhere. If you walk in my office, the word intent is everywhere. And so now, at the end of this year, I'll come up with a new word, but it really is, and that's really. You have to be intentional about your life. I said to somebody yesterday, I said, so tell me how you would rate 2019. Like looking back at 2019, it's the end of a decade, it's the end of a year. How do you look at 2019? And great woman. And she said, kind of just a blur, kind of just, I don't know, it just kind of went by. And I was like, all right, well, you're in your 40s. And let's say your average life expectancy, the average life expectancy in the United States is 78. Actually, for the first time in the last 50 years, it went down this year.
Really?
Because of suicide and a drug addiction.
Oh, my God.
So first time ever, first time in many years. Let's say you live to be 78. You have, 40 years left of your life. I said, do you have a year just to let kind of just go by? Do you have can you waste a year?
Yeah,
not that you wasted the year, but there's nothing memorable. There's nothing that stuck out. There's no Cannonball moments. There's nothing like that this year for you. And she was like, no, when you put it that way, no. And that's why I think you really have to be intentional about what you're doing with your life. You have to be intentional about what you want, say what you want, and then go for it, and realize that you're worthy of it and you're capable of it.
For sure. I love that. I love that. And that's one thing that, me and my wife talk quite a bit about with our kiddos, and just making sure that we're making good memories, because they're about to get in school. My daughter's going to start kindergarten next year.
Yeah.
And talk about a blur. I mean, it's going to fly by.
Yeah.
And we realize that, and we know that, we got to slow down and make sure that we're spending time with our kiddos, and make sure that we're going and doing stuff that's going to be fun and starting to formulate those memories and those relationships. And the same thing with business though too, right? And if you don't have, and it kind of gets going back to the habits, right? That's really strategic planning, right? So what you're going to do is you're going to say, hey, I got a 10-year goal, and then I got a 3-year goal, and I got a 1-year goal, and then I got quarterly goals, and then I got what I'm going to do this week.
Right.
And your weekly task should tie into your quarterly rocks or quarterly goals, which should then tie into your yearly goal, which should then tie into your 3-year goal, which then should tie in your 10-year goal. And so the idea is, if I do this week, and I do this for, 16 weeks in a quarter, or whatever that is, right? No, 12.
12.
Yeah, 12 weeks in a quarter. If I do this, my weekly to-do list, or whatever it is, 12 weeks, I should accomplish my quarterly. And if I accomplish my quarterly 4 times, then I should accomplish my yearly.
Right.
If I accomplish my yearly 3 times, I should accomplish my 3-year goal. If I accomplish my 3-year goal 3 times, I should accomplish my 10-year goal.
Correct.
And it's exact same concept.
Thing.
The exact concept. And what's cool, what you said is you should be doing that for yourself too. You should be sitting down and thinking about, hey, what is it that I want to accomplish this year? And writing that stuff down. And hopefully not being so close-fisted and so rigid that if you miss something or if it evolves, that's okay.
Yeah.
But if you never write anything down, you're certainly not going to do it.
Agreed.
You're certainly not going to do it.
You have a 47% higher chance of hitting your goals if you just write them down. Just write, literally the act of writing down. I think one of the things is, and it's crazy when we take people through this, what we call, and I'll show you one after we get done, but it's called the Strategic Implementation Workbook. Yeah. So this is for people's, this is how we set their goals. We don't call it a goal book, we call it Strategic Implementation Workbook. And it's coming up with these 6 areas of your life, events, Cannonball moments, finances, career, love, family, and friends, all these 6 main components of your life. And how are we going to get there? And it's amazing to me. I'm dumbfounded by the amount of people who don't think about it. Like they don't think about, to your point when we're talking about events, my kids are in 10th grade. We were having a conversation, my wife and I were having a conversation a couple weeks ago, and we're like, what are we going to do are we going to do something for spring break this year? I'm like, well, we absolutely are doing something. Yeah. Because I have two spring breaks with my kids realistically left, right? Because they're in 10th grade and they're going to, I have 10th, 11th, 12th, so let's say 3, maybe 12. But when they get to college, they're not coming home. Yeah. The likelihood of them coming home and saying, hey, listen, Dad, I want to go on spring break vacation with you as opposed to with all my college friends, right? Yeah. That's
not happening. You hope it's not. You hope it's not happening.
Exactly right. No, I want you to go with your friends, and they're going to start living their life. And so I'm like, I have 2 spring break vacations left with them. I'm not wasting them. Like I got to be intentional about it. I have to plan for that. My mother is 67 years old. I have to be intentional about, if I see her, last year I physically saw my mother 8 times. Yeah. She lives 20 minutes from me. Yeah. I saw her 8 times in that year, right? She's 67. Let's say she lives to 78 years old. If I see her 8 times a year, it means I have 80 visits to my mother left. Like, that's unacceptable. Yeah. So you have to be intentional about, all right, what's my plan? What do I want to achieve? I want to see my mother more. Okay, well, let's schedule family dinners. Let's put it on the calendar. Let's become strategic about what you want in your life, as opposed to just winging it and hoping that it all works out.
Yeah. And letting life happen to you.
Life happen to you. That's exactly right. But I think that's all a mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, and being a passive participant in life. Yeah. You do not want that. No, and I agree. And honestly, some people are more driven than others. Yeah. I'm like off the charts on drive, right? Yeah. So I'm very ambitious, very driven. We get along so well, I think. And so, so me and you, we love that kind of stuff. There may be somebody who's perfectly fine just being laid back and I think that's okay too.
Agreed.
But I still think that even if that person sat back and thought like, what are a couple things I want to accomplish in my life and wrote them down, it would help them out, right? Yeah, agreed. But I think that's one thing that's always helpful for me, and that's, I don't know if it's like, there's that recency bias. There's all this different bias. I think one thing that I get caught up in is thinking that everybody thinks just like I do.
You know what I mean? Or confirmation bias.
Or or just, thinking that, hey, since I've had that experience, everybody must also experience it that way. And that may not be true. I'm super driven, super motivated. I love personal growth. Not everybody's like that, and that's okay. One example of that, my wife. My wife is beautiful, wonderful, awesome, lovely lady. I'm so lucky to have her. But she's not driven like me. She's not driven like me at all. Yeah. And honestly, if she was, it'd probably be trouble. It probably would be trouble.
That's exactly right.
But and so I have to always kind of temper myself a little bit with that, because I'm like, let's go create an experience. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. She's like, Doug, that's cool and all, but you realize I'm the one that's going to be packing up the kids. I'm the one that schedules the band. I'm like, well, you got a pretty good point there, honey. You got a pretty good point there.
You're the artist and she's the integrator.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm the visionary. I'm the one with the big ideas. Let's go do this. That's like, well, Doug, I'm the one that's got to drag them to the airport while we're getting boarding the plane, and you'll be, reading the Wall Street Journal or something.
Yeah, right.
And I'm really not that that big of a deadbeat, but you get the point.
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you.
It's always fun when we kind of have those conversations and we kind of can jab back and forth because we're different, and she's awesome at what she does, and she's so good at it, and I don't want her to change at all.
Yeah.
Although I tried to do that for years.
Huge mistake, right?
Mistake. Yeah. You always hear that when you get married. Then I'll never try to change her. She's perfect. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Let me know how that goes for you.
After 20 years of marriage, I can tell you,
it does not go well.
It does not go well. But I think to your point, I think that it's okay. The idea of it's okay to just kind of wing life, and I get it, right? And I think that to your point earlier, you got to be able to pivot. You got to be. I just want to increase my probabilities of achieving the life I want.
For sure,
it's not guaranteed, and it's okay if people, listen. I have one of my favorite books of all times is a book called "Mistakes Were Made, but Not by Me." Actually, Tim Ferriss recommended.
Really?
Book,
okay.
Right? Mistakes were made, but not by me. And what it talks about is why we justify our beliefs. Why we have this, we're a little bit of a hypocrite here and there, how our brain really works. And so I'm okay with understanding that people have different views than me and different opinions than me. The part and the judgments, and that's really what that book's about, is about judgments. And I try really hard not to judge other people and their beliefs. The challenge I have is when you say you want more.
Yeah.
And you've come up with a story that stops you from actually achieving more. Like it's okay if you don't want more. And again, I'm not talking about more stuff, more material things, right? I'm just talking about more influence, more life, more health, more love, more gratitude, more religion, whatever, right?
Yep.
That's okay. I think the challenge is if you say you don't want it, you don't want it. But if you want it, but in this world, if you cling to a hope that I don't know how to get it, or I'm not worthy of it, or if there's some story that stops you from getting it, I think that's where the challenge is.
No doubt.
Do you know what I'm saying?
It's no doubt.
If you want it, go get it.
No doubt.
So that you can have it. You weren't created. I asked this question yesterday, and I don't bring my faith into a lot of conversation, but I have a very strong faith. But do you believe that the God that created you for a life of lack? And everybody in the room said, and this was down south, so you can talk about this in the corporate
Bible
setting,
Belt,
right? And they were like, no. There's like an emphatic no, right? I said, well, then that means that you believe that you were created for a life of abundance, right? Either lack or abundance, right?
Yep.
And they were like, yeah, you absolutely created for you were created for a life of abundance. So if you believe that to be true, then there's got to be a way for you to go get it. There's got to be, like, if you're created for this, they don't say you're created for this and then not give you the tools to do it.
Yeah.
So you have the tools to do it. You just have to believe you're capable of it. That's where I have a struggle, where people will come up with some story that says, well, I'm not capable of that. And I know this because that was my whole life for a long time. I was like, well, I'm not capable of this. And I had the wrong mindset, the wrong beliefs, and I was going nowhere fast.
For sure.
But once I flipped that switch, it's amazing now on this quest because I believe I can get it.
For sure. Yeah, and I think that's a mindset deal, right? Like when you lack confidence or you have a problem with procrastination or, whatever it is that's holding you back. And I think that's why, books, consultants, coaches, just putting yourself in situations, going to conferences, putting yourself in situations that are going to constantly challenge you. Listen to podcasts. There's so many different personal growth. And for me, that's where that kind of stuff comes in. It's just, it's huge. It's huge.
And if you're listening, I'm saying somebody is hearing this conversation right now, obviously they've already cracked the door and say, I want more. I want more education. I want more knowledge. How do you get, and how do you, I spoke to 1,000 students a couple of weeks ago, Evan, and I love speaking to students because when I was in middle school, high school, elementary, like I didn't have the right mindset. I didn't have the right beliefs. And, trying to let them know, hey, listen, this is really, I guess that shows my age, but if I would have known back then what I know now, man, it's a totally different world. I have a pretty good life, and I think it's all a life by design. But at the end of the day, that's what we got to talk about. We got to talk more about, hey, you're created to have this.
Yeah,
you're created capable of this. You're created enough. Now let's figure out the strategies to help you go get there. Figure out the support you need.
I'll ask you this too. So I know for me, when I had the mindset of and I think you talked about this earlier, it's always somebody else's fault. It's all, if I got in trouble, it was because a teacher didn't like me. Or if this happened to me, it's because my girlfriend was mad at me or whatever, right? And this is when I was a kid. I had a mindset that anything that ever happened to me was somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
And if you have that mindset, it's not happening. Like you're not gonna have zero success because it's always somebody else's fault. And you have to be able to say, you know what? I can control my destiny. Again, if I have an input over here, it's going to impact this output over here. But if it's always somebody else's fault, then you never have to look at yourself, Chad. You never have to look at yourself. And if you don't look at yourself, you don't challenge yourself, and you don't realize, like I know, even as much personal growth and coaching and counseling and AA and NA meetings that I've been to and 12-step type stuff I've done, I know that I have blind spots still. I still have blind spots in my life, you know? And even though I try to surround myself with people that kind of point those out, I know that I have stuff that I struggle with. I know that there's stuff that I'm doing today that's probably having a negative impact on people around me, and I'm not even aware that I'm doing it. There's got to be, right?
Oh, yeah.
We all have that kind of stuff. And so to take that even further, to say that, you know what, nothing's my fault. I do nothing wrong, and it's all your fault. And typically, like when we have problems with employees, that is the counter of the culture we try to have here, which is improving, right? If you're never willing to say, hey, you know what, maybe there are some things I could have done better there. Yeah, you know, A, B, and C, you know, Mr. and Mrs. Smith or Susie Q over there shouldn't have acted that way either, but I could have done this better. If you're not willing to say that, like, you're never going to get any better. And your life is constantly going to be a mess. Because you can't control it. And the only person you can control is yourself. And when you change, miraculously, everybody else around you changes. Your circumstances change because your perception of them have now changed. And then typically when you change, your behaviors change. Those around you have to change as a result of that. They have to. True. And so you have to control what you can control. And the only thing you really can control is yourself. And that's your perceptions of reality, how you look at things. I had a deal talking about, forgiveness and talking about there's a deal in the 12 steps. I always go back to this, but it talks about what's my part in the situation. And that's really where I learned it. What's my part in the situation? So, I'm mad at Chad because, and 3 years ago I was doing this business deal and Chad swooped in and stole it from me and he told me he wasn't and he did it. And so I'm mad. So I have a resentment against Chad or whatever it is, right? Yeah. Well, maybe Chad was 100% wrong. I did nothing wrong there. But you know what my part is? I'm mad. That's my part. I've held on to resentment for 3 years. That's my part in it. If nothing else, you still have that part in it. Okay. So take some responsibility. Look at yourself in the mirror. Surround yourself with people that are going to tell you the truth, not what you want to hear. Yeah. And man up, pull yourself up, or woman up, pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Do some stuff that's going to challenge you, and you'll get better. If you want a better life, those are the kind of things you have to do. But it has to start with having some personal accountability and looking at yourself. And if it's always somebody else's fault, if they hadn't done this or they hadn't done that, I just responded to what they had done, and they were tacky to me, so I was tacky back. No, you have a choice there. You have a choice. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, and nobody listening to this podcast is there. Yeah, I'm sure we're all thinking about people in our lives we know that act that way, but we probably do it too. I know that sometimes my first reaction is getting defensive too, right? And it's very, very natural. But I think that for me, that's when I went from it's everybody else's fault to, you know what? I actually had a part in that. That's when my life changed. Yeah. And to me, that's such a huge mind shift. It's almost like they call it a spiritual awakening almost. But when I look at my life and I look at what was one of the pivotal things, one of the decisions I made, when my mind was opened to that, to, hey, good gosh, I did have a part in that. And man, if I hadn't done this, that, and the other, maybe my life wouldn't be this way. And yeah, it was tough at home, but I'm the one, I should have went and communicated that better, or I could have done this better. And I was a little kid at the time, but there's still some things I could have done better, Yeah. Or I shouldn't have perceived it that way or whatever. There's always a part that we have in it. Yeah. And when I started looking at that, miraculously, I started getting more healthy. I started getting better. And so I think, when you talk about personal improvement, to me, if you don't have that, it's going to be tough. Really? You're going to have a tough life.
There's so much there. I think that, I was a card-carrying member of the Victim Club.
Yep.
For most of my life. Didn't matter what it was. I flashed my membership card and said, hey,
I'm in,
right? It's victim, poor me, poor me. I'm saying, I graduated high school with a 1.7 grade point average.
Yeah.
And it wasn't none of it was my fault. It was the teacher's fault.
Yep.
So I never read a book.
They didn't like
they
you.
didn't like me. And so Tom Billows says that his life changed. The most monumental day of his life was the day that he realized that everything in his life was his fault.
Yep.
And when I first heard that, I was like, I got to find out more what he means about that. And what he said was, everything's my fault. See, when I believe that everything's my fault, even if it's not, when this becomes my truth, I find ways to get better.
Yeah.
But what happens is, and this is what that book talks about, mistakes were made but not by me, is that when I deflect and I say, and I judge others or I put the blame on others, my brain, this is biology, not psychology, my brain stops learning. My brain says, oh, well, it's not my fault.
Yep.
This isn't important. I don't need to learn anymore. But when you say, everything is my fault, the way that I react to it, the way that I handle it, the way that I interpret it, the way that I respond to it, whatever, then it forces me to get better.
Yeah.
And so for me, I started thinking, wow, there was a shift moment. And shift for me stands for see how I find truth. And before I was finding truth in excuses, alibis, and blame. And now I find truth in, all right, how can I interpret this better? How can I get this better? So I think if you want personal growth, the first thing is that you have to look within and say, where's my involvement and how can I view this better? How can I see this better to get better?
Yep. And a great example of that, and this is my personal life, but I was doing some stuff with some employees here, and I was really getting frustrated. I was like, hey, I want them to do this. They're not getting it done. I feel like they should be getting this. And then, but when I really sat back, I started looking at it. I wasn't communicating right. It was my fault. I was not communicating right. And it was a hard pill to swallow, but it's true. I wasn't communicating right. And when I thought about that, I started communicating differently. And it's gotten, but it was my fault. It's 100% my fault. 100%. And it's just, and so when you're talking, that made me think about that. And that's what I'm saying. I still have blind spots. I had a huge blind spot there where I thought that I was being clear. I was not being clear. I was not communicating appropriately. I was not communicating clearly. And when I started to, magically, it started getting better. It got getting better. And so again, it comes right back to me. It's 100%. And like you said, everything's my fault. And when you have, and I love what you talked about with the biology. I never realized that, but you're 100% right. If it's somebody else's fault, why would you quit? Why would you keep learning? Like, there's no need. It's not my fault. Right? I'm perfect, right?
I'm good. So what it does is it flex your brain. And now, but when it's my fault, you go, man, I don't want to feel that way again. I want to learn from that. And so your brain starts recognizing, all right, now I can do this. And we talk about it in sales all the time. I said, okay, well, why did we lose the sale? And somebody will say, well, because this person they had a cheaper price over there. They had $20,000 cheaper, or because they were giving this away, or because that buyer was crazy. They'll come up with some reasons why this person didn't buy a home or didn't buy from us. And I'm like, okay, so how do you get better? Well, it wasn't my fault. I couldn't control it. So I'm like, so there's no learning involved in that at all. So let's say that if they were $20,000 cheaper and they bought a house with D.R. Horton, less quality, less value, whatever it is, they bought somebody else that was cheaper. Well, let's look at it, instead of saying, well, I lost it because they were $20,000 cheaper, let's look at it as I lost it because I couldn't show the value of why we were better.
Yeah.
Which one helps you get better? One, we say this because we don't want to feel bad about ourselves, but it's okay to feel a little bit bad and say, all right, well, I don't want that feeling anymore. Now I'm going to figure out how to overcome this. I'm going to become better. I'm going to become better at showing value. Right? I'm going to become better and so to me, it starts with that quest of how do I become better? Yeah. Every opportunity in my life is an opportunity for me to learn to become better. And I don't always obviously operate that. I still go back to that. I still flash that victim card sometimes. I still, because it's easy to do. It's a hard battle to constantly want to get better. Yeah. And you're not always your best self, but that's the guiding principle of like, all right, how can I look at this opportunity and get better?
No doubt.
Yeah. All right, so I know I'm taking a lot of your time, but this is I could sit here and talk for.
It's great. I love it.
for hours. So what's next? So 38 years old, unbelievable. 36. 36. Sorry, I robbed you of 2 years. 36 years old. owner of a phenomenal company, growing, building. What's next?
A beautiful wife and
Beautiful
two
wife,
beautiful
kids.
kids
Yeah,
I love dearly.
Like
Yep.
what's next?
Yeah, for us, I think we'll continue to grow some. We're gonna go. The place we're looking is North Houston right now, so we're 45 minutes away from the Woodlands and from. I'm sure y'all have heard of that in Conroe and
Yeah.
Tomball, Texas. There's a lot of suburbs all around Houston. Houston kind of ebbs and flows the oil and gas market. It's not as bad as it used to be like in the 80s, but it still is. And I feel like long term, Houston is going to be a good growth market. So we're trying to kind of get more into that market. We've been in Conroe, which is right outside the Woodlands, for a number of years, and we're going to continue to kind of push that direction. So we're excited about that. But I think between 7 and 10% growth a year over, and that's kind of what we're looking at. Our 10-year goal is to get to double, and to get to 1,500 units.
Wow.
And so excited about that. But we were growing at 20-30% a year there for a while. I don't think once you get to a certain size, it's just more difficult to do. And
Yeah.
for me, I don't know, and I don't want to bet the farm. I'm pretty conservative, and so I'm gonna let the metrics kind of drive our growth. And so we have a couple of financial metrics. We have a risk asset ratio that we like to kind of keep in line. We have a debt to equity that we like to keep in line. So if we kind of keep those at a certain level, we'll allow that to drive a lot of our growth. But a lot of it also comes to finding really good development partners, especially in that North Houston market, because it's extremely capital intensive to develop raw dirt, as everybody knows.
Right.
And if we can find the right partner there, that'll kind of let us kind of tag along with those guys, just take down lots, then I think maybe that'll be a little bit quicker than we anticipate. So we'll see how it plays out. And then, I think just be conservative. Obviously, the market's not going to continue to run up. I don't know if it's going to be next year. Last year, this time, I thought it was going to be 2019. I thought, the market this last quarter has been horrible. There's no way it's going to rebound. Interest rates get back in line, and then boom, we hit the spring selling season. The rest is history. We just keep on going, right? Rinse and repeat, and we just keep going. And so we'll see. And everybody's saying now, 2020 is going to be slow. The second half of the year is going to slow down. And I don't know. Like I'm not smart enough. I'm not smart enough to figure that out, Chad. I'm not. But what I am smart enough to say is, hey, you know what? We're not going to bet the farm. We're going to listen to our bankers. And our bankers have told us, hey, if you pay attention to your liquidity, to your lots and your land position, and debt to equity is kind of part of that as well. If you don't get over leveraged, if you look at those three things, you study them, and you allow that to drive your growth, and you're in a healthy position, then no matter what happens, if 2005 happens again, you'll be in good shape.
Yeah.
And so I listened very, very intently when they were talking. I took very, very good notes, and that's how we built our company. And so when a banker says, hey, if your risk asset ratio, which is your finished lots plus your raw land, is more than 1 times your net worth or your equity in the company, you're in trouble.
You're in trouble if it goes under.
I think I can't remember what the exact number, but it was either 1.5 times or 2 times. It was one of those. He said, hey, if you were 1.5 times or 2 times, and then it was debt to equity. There was a couple different ratios. They said, hey, look, if you were over this number, 90% of the builders, this is a big bank, one of the biggest construction lenders that this guy was working for. They did a huge study after the recession. He said, hey, if you were over these numbers, you went bust. 90%, you went bust. And if you were under these numbers, 90% you made it, or whatever,
right.
or 100% you made it, or whatever. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to get under those numbers.
I'm going to stay below
I'm
that
going to get
line.
under that number. That is some wisdom, and that's something that I'm going to. A lot of people, the banks put all these covenants on us, and I agree they can be cumbersome. But to me, you don't want to have so much rope you go out and hang yourself. Like you need some discipline. And if a bank is telling me, hey, we feel like that if you are over this, you're a bad risk. I don't want to bank you. Man, I better listen to that. That means I probably don't want to go do that deal. I mean, there's some wisdom there. These guys have years and years and years of history of doing this type of stuff. I better listen to them.
They're the experts in that field.
Yeah, I never have looked at that as a negative thing. I've always looked at that as a positive. And I'm a finance guy, so I love that type of stuff. And so we've really, really focused on our balance sheet. And I know this isn't really the question you're getting at, but this is what we've done. And so we've really focused on our balance sheet. And so if a downturn does happen, we're hopeful there'll be some opportunity. We know there'll be some opportunity somewhere.
Nice.
And so we'll go out there and we'll grow. And that's when we had our most growth, was the last downturn. That's when we entered Killeen and Temple and gotten some new positions in Waco. Also when we went into the Conroe market, that North Houston market. So a tremendous amount of our growth has happened when other builders have gone in somewhere and have gotten overextended and who have been able to perform. We've been able to go and pick it up. And we've done that time and time and time again. Talk about, turning nothing into something. My father really probably made his way in the home building business by doing that, by going to projects. There was one project where the street, the weeds, literally had the sidewalks, had the curb, had the streets. There was weeds in the street. I mean, in the street. They had grown on the street, couch in the middle of the street. But he'll see a diamond in the rough. He'll go buy that thing and say, if I can get the price good enough, I can get the in home value good enough, it's going to sell. And he's done that time and time and time again, where he's gone in and cleaned up projects. Unfortunately, there's no more in Bryan College Station. So,
Yeah, right.
but we continue to kind of look for those type of deals to kind of get into, and when things are booming, a lot of that stuff's been picked over, right? And a lot of that, the low lying fruit's no longer there. But that honestly, like when it was the '08 era, I love, because you really can't get too hurt.
Oh yeah, right.
As long as you're pretty well capitalized, people aren't overpaying for stuff. You're not making bad decisions. When I get really nervous, Chad, is when I hear, "Hey, Doug, you better come in and put an offer on this. We got such and such that's coming. We just got an LOI from." I'm like, you know what? I'm out. I'm not making quick decisions. I'm not going to make a decision. I've talked to a buddy of mine this weekend who's talking about a builder that he knew, and actually worked out well for him, that when a big national was coming in, they went and bought up everything, and they were trying to kind of keep the. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make.
You can't keep the nationals out.
Yeah, you can't, and again, even if you could, is that really the best decision for you? For me, it's not. I'm not going to go and overload my balance sheet to try to keep somebody else out of our market. Or I'm going to go and try to find the A locations and load up my balance sheet with that.
Yep.
And have a competitive
and then learn how to
advantage
compete,
there.
like we were talking about.
Exactly, yeah, and then get better. That's what I'm going to do. But going and taking unnecessary risks to try to keep somebody out, or just in general, to me is a bad business decision. And then again, like when I get that pressure from people, like, hey, it's this feeding frenzy. That's kind of what it was in Conroe there for a while. A couple of years ago, oil was at $90 a barrel. Everybody was just gobbling up everything. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to sit on the sidelines. I'm going to sit on the sidelines. I'm not going to do anything. And then oil went back down to $50 a barrel, and now all of a sudden we're out there buying stuff, and people are calling us again,
Yeah, right.
But I'm not going to go and make a bad decision. I do, and I have to have a good comfort level and stuff. And for being a spec home builder, I'm a pretty conservative guy, So that's kind of how.
Which is almost an oxymoron, because
It
you're
is.
saying like,
Spec home builder.
Spec home builder.
We
and
are.
I'm conservative.
Yeah, we are. And then other thing that I'm looking at, Chad, and I don't know if we'll get to reading books, but one of my favorite ones is The Snowball. Mm-hmm. If you've read that, that's Warren Buffett's. I don't think he read it. I don't think he didn't write it. But the thing that I got out of that book was what he's done is he has the insurance companies that he's bought, Geico and this, that, and the other. And basically his business model there is he gives you the bill for the premium. You write the check for the premium, and then at the end of the year he's hopeful that his payout of whatever the accidents are, or whatever in your car or your house or whatever, is less than the premium collected. But what he gets that for Geico, billions and billions of dollars sitting there that he gets to go and invest now.
Yeah, right.
He gets to invest that. Yeah. And so the way that I look at that for our business, so what he said, what he likes to look at is businesses that are not capital intensive. Home building, sorry, we're out. Like home building is very, very capital intensive.
Right.
And that's what's difficult, right? You're making money, but you're constantly churning it right back in the company, buying lots, buying land, investing in systems, and it's an expensive business to be in. But what he said he likes the companies that you can go buy and that do not require a whole lot of capital investment, but they flip off cash flow. And he takes that cash flow and then he goes and puts it in other companies. And those companies do the same thing. Then they flip off cash flow. And so it's the whole thing, like you want to be making money while you're asleep.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's what I'm looking. So I'm doing a lot of rental property, a lot of investment real estate. And so I take, some proceeds every year from Stylecraft and I invest those in things that I know a lot about, that I have a competitive advantage on. And so that's big picture. That's kind of what I'm looking at. So we're going to grow Stylecraft, and then I'm going to continue to kind of grow my rental portfolio. I have a lot of rental property that we do, and then just kind of look at other little business. I have a couple other business ventures that I've done. I started I don't know if you've heard of Red Door Homes.
Oh, yeah.
There's a couple
Oh, yeah.
different. So we started
The
a
Red
Red
Door.
Door franchise. Got a guy named Vince Ruffino. He's a rock star. He's running that for us. I'm very uninvolved, but he's doing a great job with that.
Nice.
And they got a really good friend of mine who started an express employment franchise of all things in a small town here in Texas. He ran the one here in Bryan College Station. So me and him kind of partnered up on that. But again, those are things that take very, very little of my time. And those guys are kind of they're running it 100%. The thing that I am trying to grow is the rental portfolio, and then of course Stylecraft and our land development and doing that kind of stuff. So
it's a busy
those are
plate.
kind of
Plus you're involved in a lot of nonprofits and
Yep.
the board of nonprofits.
Yep.
So you're going all in every.
Yeah.
everywhere. Plus a father of two small children.
Yeah.
You're going in everywhere.
Yeah. No, it's a lot of fun. And the nonprofits is one thing that I really, really enjoy. And, going in there and helping those guys because they have such good hearts. All these nonprofits and United Way, I've been involved with a ministry here in town called SOS Ministries. It's involved with inner city youth and just inner city individuals in general that just were not given the same hand that I was, right?
Yeah.
And they're dealing with poverty and gangs and violence and drug addiction and just on and on and on. They have a men's home and children's programs and Bible studies and all really, really good, positive stuff. They've done a great job with it. So I'm the board chair of that. And I get so much joy out of being able to go in there because they have such great hearts. But what they need help with is just kind of more the business side, going in there and making pragmatic type decisions. And so they know how to minister and to share, the gospel and get out there and really outreach. But what they kind of lack is, how do you build a real team? How do you build the infrastructure to kind of move those things forward? So getting in there and kind of brainstorming with them and providing some feedback has been super, super helpful and super beneficial. And I have a huge heart for that. I have a huge heart for underprivileged and for people that just didn't get the same upbringing or support that I got. And I think I have an obligation to get in there and help out as much as I can, Chad. So we try to do that. We really believe in giving back and investing in the community, and we do that with our time and also our treasure. So it's important to us.
Yeah, love that. All right, so thanks for coming on. Listen, I think if you've never heard of Stylecraft Builders before, you certainly know who they are now. And if you didn't know who Doug French is, you know who he is now, and you got to follow him more. Where do people connect with you? If somebody's listening to this, like, are you on LinkedIn? Are you on, like, how do people?
Yeah,
connect?
I'm not super active on social media, but my wife is, and she tags me in quite a bit of stuff. She'll see stuff all about my kiddos. But I'm on Facebook. I was on Instagram. I got off Instagram, Chad. I think I'm still on it, but I never get on it. Yeah. And then I'm on LinkedIn. So yeah, just friend me on Facebook or friend me on LinkedIn or connect with me on LinkedIn.
Find them on Stylecraft. I'm saying follow Stylecraft. You guys are.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And we have a really Beth Russell does all of our social media, all of our marketing type stuff, and she is a rock star.
She does a great job.
She is awesome.
I don't know her, but I'm telling you, I follow her.
She's awesome.
I'm like,
so for sure. So Stylecraft is definitely on Instagram and Facebook. So yeah, get on there and like us. And yeah, if you want to, shoot me a message on Facebook or whatnot. Yeah.
So last question. When you leave this earth, man, you're young, so this is going to be a long time from now, 70 years from now. What do you want your contribution to have been?
To what? To this organization or just
to the world?
Town? The world. I think to me, just to leave it better than I found it. And I really feel like that. I feel like I've been given a lot, so I think that a lot is expected of me, and I take that really, really seriously. And I don't put so much pressure on myself that it's crippling, but at the same time, I want to be able to make an impact. And one of the things that to me, it's I think the one thing that I'm really kind of passionate about besides business is just helping the poor. And I really want to somehow, and I'm still trying to kind of flesh that out and figure it out, like how I really want to get in there and do that. But some way, somehow, I'm going to get. And I already am. I shouldn't say it some way, somehow, but I really want to make an impact on how do we get people that are stuck, like we talked about. When that's really what we talked a lot about today is How do you get people that are stuck unstuck so they can be productive?
Love
They can be productive, not just so they can make money or buy new things, but so they can have a fulfilled life and they can be happy. They can be happy and they can be fulfilled. And so I think that's a big part of it. So there's a lot of me that has the charitable side of me. And in the business, I think when I look back, I want to make sure that I went for it. I want to make sure that I was not held back, that fear or whatever it is did not hold me back, and then I went for it. Yeah. And then I really went for it. And then I gave life my all. I gave my kiddos my all. I gave my wife my all. I gave the company my all, and I gave our community my all. And it's a better place because I was there, hopefully. Awesome. So I think that's definitely the goal, Chad. We'll see.
That's it. Doug French. You didn't know him before this. You know who he is now. Connect with him, follow him, Stylecraft Builders. Awesome. Hey, thanks. I appreciate your time and looking forward to learning more.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. It's been a blast, man. Awesome. It's been fun.
Thanks. Bye.